Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to a Wednesday night edition of Sirhan on X, live on prime time from Cincinnati, Ohio, in the United States. A nice, breezy 70-degree night here in Cincinnati. Sun setting, the dark is coming, a long work day over with. Now I got a chance to do this. Hope everyone had themselves a wonderful 12th of March 2025. Some things I'd like to get to today, including for my boxing followers, to teach you guys what a real robbery is, not the Devin Haney Vasil Lomachenko decision. That was not a robbery, but I'll get to that later. I'm going to touch right down to it. Uh, Today it was just announced the Rams released the standout wide receiver Cooper Kupp, a fixture for the Rams offense over the last 8 seasons. The Super Bowl MVP that won them Super Bowl 56 when they beat Cincinnati. It was time. It was time for them to part ways, obviously, and you knew this was coming after the signing of Devontae Adams to pair him opposite Puka Nakua. I think Cup still has a lot game left in as a wide receiver. I mean, teams that need a wide receiver, we talk about like New England, Seattle, Chicago, or even a Pittsburgh. They'll probably be picking up their phones and blowing this guy up as I'm speaking, because those teams are desperate for a receiver, and I expect them to start to make the moves to try and get him. I think he'll still be a solid fit anywhere. Still a sound receiver, but I think his time in LA was basically over. I mean, he gave him. I mean, he did his job there. Job well done. Won him the Super Bowl, Triple Crown winner, stand up receiver for many years in LA. Still think he still can make an impact as a wide receiver number two, or maybe even a high end number three wherever he goes. So it'd be interesting to see how teams look for who need a receiver, and now this he's out in the open. I expect him to be, the market to get hot for him, especially for teams that are desperate for a receiver. And that's what we're going to have here in Cooper Kupp. Now I don't know where he's going to wind up, but I think he can fit anywhere, with any offense, because he's a versatile receiver who could basically play in the slot or even out in the isolated coverage or whatever you want to call it. But I think he could be a good fit anywhere he goes. Don't know where he would go. I'm not a predictor on that, because I think the market will be hot. Everybody was waiting for this. The Rams tried to trade him. The asking price was a bit too steep for teams to engage in, and that's why this wound up happening today. So Cooper Kupp is going to be wearing a new uniform of the 2025 season, and we're going to find out where here shortly, because I expect the turnaround time to be real quick, and I expect someone to make the right offer to pick him up, because the Rams try to get something for him. Teams didn't want to pony up whatever they wanted to pony up, and this is what they're going to be stuck with. But I think the Rams will be fine. I think Kupp will be fine, and the season will be coming up here within the next 5.5 months. And on that note, real quick, happy League New Year to all my NFL followers. It's officially here as of 4 o'clock today. So the trades, the signings that took place are now official. And wherever he goes, Cooper Kupp, it will be official. Speaking of wide receiver markets, this one hit as I was on an NFL show last night. The news literally broke at the same time. This was DeAndre Hopkins, who was basically in Kansas City last year, signed a 1-year, $6 million deal with Baltimore, basically to be the wide receiver three next to Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman. Basically, he's a Nelson Aguilar replacement, and Aguilar was solid for Baltimore the last couple of years in that particular role. I mean, you can't complain with this for Baltimore. It's basically a low-risk, high-reward move. I mean, 1 year, $6 million for a guy who essentially is on his obviously in his downturn, not the number one receiver he was when he was in Arizona, where he was making massive catch over massive catch, putting up big numbers, and at one point was widely considered the number one receiver in the entire NFL. But I think in this offense at Baltimore, as a wide receiver number three, I think he could be a solid contributor. I mean, you still have Zay Flowers and Rashad Bateman on the outside. Bateman came on this as the season wore on in 2024, and I think he would fit right in there. You can't complain about this if you're Baltimore. Basically, if it works, you got the job done. If it doesn't work, it is what it is. I mean, that's who he is at this point. I mean, he's not the guy he was 5-6 years ago, but I think a good solid fit for what Baltimore needs and what Baltimore does as a wide receiver number three. Maybe put him in the same kind of play as they did with Nelson Aguilar once upon a time. They're comparing them to the previous old receivers they had, like Odell Beckham Jr., et cetera, et cetera. I remind you, those guys were trying to be wide receiver one or wide receiver number two. I think Hopkins is in a different situation than those guys are, simply because I think he'd be a better fit for what they do in Baltimore as opposed to what they had in the past. And of course, in other Baltimore news, for my Ravens followers who I get along with well, they released Arthur Mollett, a bit of a stunner. But we consider the fact they're more than likely going to try and get Jaire Alexander from Green Bay. Maybe this makes all the sense in the world, because Alexander's either going to be traded or released from Green Bay here soon. And all the reports and all the forecasters have him going to Baltimore. They need a cornerback who could guard the number one receivers, and that's what Jaire Alexander can do. They could be a great fit there for Baltimore, because especially in the AFC North, when you talk about DK Metcalf and George Pickens in Pittsburgh, and of course Jamar Chase and T. Higgins in Cincinnati. They need a number one receiver to slow them down, because Jamar Chase just ate the secondary's lunch last season in the 2 games. Somebody needs to find a way to slow him down over there in Baltimore. Maybe Jaire Alexander could be the guy. So lots going on in Baltimore. A job well done there. Now to the 2 teams in Ohio who are grasping for straws right now. Speaking of the AFC North, let's start in Cleveland. Now they're going to try and talk to Russell Wilson and try and get Kirk Cousins. You just got Kenny Pickett for a 5th. You're talking to Russell Wilson and you're talking to Kirk Cousins. Yeah, I remind you what you did 3 years ago when you forked out all that draft capital for Deshaun Watson. I mean, I feel like I have to beat that dead horse again. But as I said, you guys made the bed. Go lie in it. And you just paid Myles Garrett, talked him out of wanting to out of Cleveland, to paid him to be the highest paid non-quarterback in NFL history with that ridiculous contract he got. Congratulations. You just made yourselves look like fools once again. And you guys are just basically grasping for straws, trying to find a quarterback. I mean, you just got Kenny Pickett. Now you're going to try and get either Kirk Cousins or Russell Wilson. When you're resorting to getting Russell Wilson after the year he had in Pittsburgh, and Kirk Cousins, who basically hasn't fully recovered from the ACL injury he had in Minnesota, you're grasping for straws, and it reeks desperation. I get trying to appease Myles Garrett that you're going to try and build a contender. I've always said when it comes to these short gap quarterbacks, you're getting nothing done. I mean, you got the number 2 pick in the draft. Might as well bite the bullet, draft a Cam Ward, draft a Shedeur Sanders, and go from there. But you guys want to get these used up, build up like a Lego type quarterbacks who basically have nothing left to offer. And trust me, Steelers fans will be having the time of their lives if you get Russell Wilson, because the same thing is going to happen in Cleveland that happened to him in Pittsburgh. The thing is, he doesn't have a George Pickens to throw to. I mean, what does he have? A Jerry Jeudy who had 1 great game last season and 16 mediocre games? Good luck with this one, simply because that is who you are. That is what you are. And I said to you guys in Northeastern Ohio, and I'll say it again. This is a byproduct of you guys ignorantly and intentionally forking out the draft capital to get a quarterback who had the 26 allegations, signing him to a fully guaranteed contract he had no business getting. I remind you, the same quarterback who quit in the 2019 divisional game in Kansas City when he was with Houston, had a mediocre 2020 season, sat out 2021 on his self-imposed holdout. That's when the allegations happened. Then the garbage between Cleveland and Houston happened with the trade, the fully guaranteed contract, and the draft capital. And now you resorted to this. Everybody warned you. You didn't want to listen. We tried to tell you. You didn't want to listen. We saw it coming 3 years ago when you made the trade you made for Deshaun Watson. Now you gotta live with the consequences. You made that bed. Shut your mouths and go lie in it and cease to exist. That's what I gotta say about you guys in Northeastern Ohio right now. It's like every time something happens with Cleveland, the first thing that comes to everybody's mind these days is what happened when they made that trade for the Deshaun Watson, and now they're making a mockery of themselves. And basically everybody in the NFL has just taken notice. Most notably, the top 2 competitors in the AFC North, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, who basically Cleveland thought they were going to overtake to be the king of the North, and that's never happened. Actually, if I'm correct, they've never won the AFC North division title since the realignment, whenever it was. I forgot what season it was. I think it was 2002. That basically Baltimore, Pittsburgh, and Cincinnati has won all the division titles. Cleveland hasn't even finished higher than second place. That's sad. And speaking of the AFC North, let's go over here to southwestern Ohio, Cincinnati. We tried telling you this was going to happen, and now you guys are complaining, yapping, flip flapping, having your panties all up in a bunch, simply because you were expecting the Cincinnati Bengals to hit home runs in free agency. Right now, they're striking out. We told you it was going to happen. Yours truly being one of them. And I said this after you guys lost in the playoffs last season. This was coming. The front office doesn't give a damn about anything. We all know this. Everybody knows this. And shoot, even Carson Palmer told you this when he went to the Super Bowl in 2021. You guys call Carson Palmer a liar? I think Carson Palmer is somewhere in Southern California laughing at you guys right now because he told you so. And like Cleveland, you guys in Cincinnati refuse to listen. I mean, flat out refuse to listen simply because you thought it was going to be a whole different shebang when you went to the Super Bowl in 2021. You guys thought you was going to be the new New England Patriots dynasty in the AFC. He was going to overtake the Kansas City Chiefs. Should you have even overtaken the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC North with the healthy Lamar Jackson? You know, in 2021 and 22, your two division titles were because Lamar Jackson didn't finish out the season. Since Lamar Jackson's come back, you're 0-4 against Baltimore. Lamar Jackson's done anything and everything he wanted to do to you, and you guys can't accept it. That's the problem with you guys in Cincinnati. I told you, we told you what the outcome was going to be. You guys don't want to accept any accountability. I'm talking about the fans. I'm talking about the super fans like Zim, Captain, and all those morons. Like the media people from the news stations of Cincinnati to all those so-called content creators out here, whatever the hell they call themselves, the podcasters, the live streamers, or whatever. You don't want to accept any accountability for what's going on right now. You guys want to absolve yourselves from it. I told you a long time ago that this was coming. Carson Palmer warned you 3 years ago. You guys in Cincinnati refuse to listen, and I mean refuse to listen. You still want to call Carson Palmer a liar? I mean, you guys were so sick-headed obsessed, and I mean sick-headed, to want Joe Burrow being paid the highest paid player in NFL history when he got him that contract in 2023 when the boot to ball was kicked in Kansas City. I mean, from boot to ball, kicked in Kansas City, the announcement of the contract of Joe Burrow being the highest paid quarterback in NFL history at the time. You got it. Now you guys are pressing for Jamar Chase to be paid. You guys are pushing for T. Higgins to be paid. You guys are pressing for Trey Hendrickson to be paid. You guys wanting some guy named, if I can pronounce this correctly, I'm going to pull this up. Let's see here. Hang on. I named Tevin. Now you guys want Tevin Jenkins. That's it. You guys want Tevin Jenkins. You guys are pressing for Tevin Jenkins. You guys, not anybody else. You guys want Tevin Jenkins. Think about it. You guys are so sick-headed, obsessed over some guy named Tevin Jenkins. This is why I stopped dealing with you guys. This is why I've always said I'm on my own. You guys have this weird obsession over some of the most stupidest things in Cincinnati. I told you then, and I told you now. That's why I was happy that you guys didn't make the playoffs last 2 years, because it's time for you guys to confront accountability like adults, all of you guys, and you guys need to face reality, what's about to happen. Because you guys were so much on cloud nine when you went to that Super Bowl in Super Bowl 56, thinking you was going to go back there again. It was basically you were putting Joe Burrow in the same conversation as Tom Brady and Joe Montana. Give me a break. He doesn't even belong. I don't know how you guys think he belongs in that conversation, given that the guy hasn't done anything of significance when Brady and Montana were racking up MVPs and Super Bowls. I mean, you guys were on cloud nine. You guys needed to be brought down to earth. That's why, as a Bengals fan, I was glad the last 2 seasons you missed the playoffs. It's because of you guys that refused to accept accountability and any kind of responsibility for the actions you've had since you guys made the Super Bowl in 2021. And you guys acted like going to the Super Bowl was going to be a redundant thing. Ask Dan Marino how easy it was for him to make the Super Bowl in '85 and what his career was like after that. He would gladly educate you guys in Cincinnati what that was like, because that's what Joe Burrow is staring at the rest of the way at this point. I'm sorry. I love Joe Burrow like everybody else, but that's the reality. Don't blame the front office. Don't blame the players. You fans in Cincinnati, blame yourselves. You super fans in Cincinnati, blame yourselves. You content creators in Cincinnati, blame yourselves. And most importantly, you guys that work for the Cincinnati media, whether it be the coward Kelsey Conway, among many others, blame yourselves. You guys are the reason this happened. Don't point the finger at me. Don't point the finger at anywhere else. Stand in front of a mirror and look at yourselves. Otherwise, go lie in the bed you made and cease to exist. It seems like you guys just don't get it, do you? I mean, I was there week 3, Washington when Washington came here, and basically Jaden Daniels just did anything and everything he wanted to do to the Bengals. But the thing is, the Bengals fan base still want. Here's 2 problems with this. All they wanted to talk about was that missed 4th and 16 pass interference call, which was a correct call, and Bengals fans still cried about it. And basically, the second part is what Jaden Daniels did anything and everything he wanted to. They started making excuses. The problem was it was Jaden Daniels and Joe Burrow. If you want to play, because they play this stupid head-to-head quarterback matchup. I don't know why it is, because they feel the need to put Joe Burrow on a pedestal he has no business being on. Jaden Daniels dog walked Joe Burrow on that particular night, as well as everybody on that Cincinnati team. And look at where Jaden Daniels got, and look at where Joe Burrow got. That's the end of this conversation. That's a problem I've had here in Cincinnati with everybody here for the longest time. I try to be the realist. I try to be honest. And there's people that want to do anything and everything they wanted. And that's why they resort to the block button on me, because they're just cowards behind a mobile device. I said all along, I'm not a hard guy to find. I will engage in intelligent conversation. I will engage in cordial conversation. You're more than welcome to just give me a holler, and I'll gladly talk to you about it. But don't absolve yourself from any accountability and responsibility for what's happened to this team for the last 2 seasons, because you pushed the narrative to want Joe Burrow to be paid the highest paid quarterback in NFL history. You got it. When you put the pen to paper on that kind of a contract, accountability comes with it, responsibility comes with it, and the platform has changed. That's something you guys in Cincinnati still don't get. I'll probably have to talk about this again, because good luck in the 2025 season. I've seen the schedule rotation. The road games you guys are going to have, sheesh, good luck. I'll be talking more about that more all the time. I don't know why, but since they want my undivided attention, I could gladly give it. Now to the NFL draft, and it was Travis Hunter, the 2-way standout of Colorado, wants to be a 2-way player in the NFL, both on offense and defense. Good luck with this, because the NFL is going to figure you out simply because you think you can do it on both sides. I mean, I haven't seen anyone really legitimately do it on both sides. Maybe Deion Sanders for a brief stint when he was in Dallas, but that's not going to last. I think you should stick to defense, because defense is his forte. He showed it when he was at Colorado. Defense is his forte, and I think he could excel in the defensive side of the field. On the offensive side, he'll be found out real quick, especially the ways the NFL is a copycat league, and everything being out there. Teams will notice, coaching staffs will notice, coordinators will notice, and they'll figure him out real quick. He'll be fixing to have a short career if he thinks he could be a 2-way player in the NFL, because it's not like the NBA where he can be offense and defense up and down the court. You can't do that in the NFL. It's a whole different dynamic, and Travis Hunter is literally begging for a short career if he thinks he's going to cut it as a 2-way player on both sides. I actually like the kid's talent and not the kid's confidence, but I think the guy's in over his head a little bit. These kids these days, the things you learn when you're 47 years old. Now that takes care of the football segment, and I'll be talking more football because tomorrow night, I will be on an NFL spaces with a bunch of great people, part of Wager Wire. More than welcome to tune in. Great people there. By the way, if you guys are watching over there at Wager Wire, thank you for allowing me to be a part of you guys. Now I'm going to talk to some basketball a little bit. A couple of days late behind this, but I got a chance to digest some of this. This needs to be brought up. Apparently, there's a confrontation between LeBron James and his bed buddy Stephen A. Smith. Apparently, it has to do with the fact that Stephen A. just, and among many others, just laid criticism on LeBron's son, Bronny James. And apparently, in typical LeBron James fashion, He couldn't take it, so he felt the need to confront Stephen A. Smith and basically say, keep my son out of this. Once he became a part of the NBA, he's not immune to criticism. That's one thing LeBron James doesn't get. And every time he's been, remember, this is the same guy who tries to absolve himself from criticism every single chance. Phenomenal talent. There's no doubt about it. I mean, all-time great. Himself. But the way he carries himself when it comes to criticism and his willful refusal to confront it at the superstar level that he is speaks to who LeBron James is at the end of the day. Now, I'm not going to give Stephen A. Smith his flowers because he's a bona fide race-biting moron who loves to circumvent on ESPN and of course his podcast, the Stephen A. Smith Show. Especially now, he thinks he can all of a sudden win the 2028 presidential election representing the Democratic Party. Another topic for another day. But it goes to show the sensitivity athletes have these days to criticism. They act like they should be immune from it. They should be exempt from it. It doesn't work that way. Once Bronny James became a part of the NBA, it was all said and done. I mean, a lot of people are going to say he's not an NBA player. I'll leave that to you guys. I don't follow that part of the NBA anymore like I used to. But it shows the fact once you get to that level, just like in any sport, doesn't matter what it is, NFL, NBA, baseball, boxing, soccer, mixed martial arts, whatever. Once you step under that field at the professional level, any kind of criticism you get, I'm not going to say it's deserved or not. Any criticism that comes your way, it will come your way, and you better do two things: use it as a learning tool to get better, or basically just take it and move on with it. Why? Because that's what sports is, and whatever you're on the stage, whatever, especially these days, mobile devices, computer laptops, TVs, whatever. Everyone's going to nitpick everything you do. Now, I get it. These days, it's more of not how good you do, but the way you did it, and it gets dissected to about 80 to 90 different pieces. But when you're at the level that LeBron James is, and you're acting sensitive to criticism the way you do, it says a lot about LeBron James at the end of the day. And for him to confront Stephen A. Smith the way he did, because Stephen A. Smith had an opinion about LeBron James' son, Bronny James, who's a professional athlete himself, said more about LeBron James than Stephen A. Smith. Now, I'm not giving Stephen A. Smith his flowers because he's a race-biting moron. But at the end of the day, in this case, Stephen A. Smith has a right to criticize Bronny any way he wants. And if LeBron James has a problem with it, get out of the NBA. Plain and simple. And speaking of the NBA, everybody's favorite WNBA player decides to open her mouth again. The biggest narcissist walking God's green earth right now as it is. Angel Reese. The biggest narcissist walking God's green earth, doesn't matter if you're male or a female or a tree or a light bulb or a rooftop, the biggest narcissist walking around. I guess she thinks she's worth NBA player money and threatens to sit out and hold out if she's not paid NBA money. Well, first of all, I didn't even know you still existed. Second of all, for a person who misses layups, this was not a missed layup. I mean, you missed a layup so bad you shot the ball from the other side of wherever the heck you're living at to the other side of the country. I mean, that's how bad of a missed layup that was. And most importantly, if you think you're worth that kind of a money, might as well just do some soul searching, try your luck at the NBA and see where that gets you. Because you shoot your mouth on these podcasts, you basically just like all athletes, you act like you're not immune to criticism. The problem is, at the end of the day, you're what you are. What you are. You are what you are. We see the highlights. We know your forte is bricking layups so you can pad your rebounding stats. I mean, time in and time out. It's not the fact you miss layups. I mean, you miss layups so bad. A 3-year-old can make layups better than Angel Reese does. That's how bad Angel Reese misses layups. 3-year-olds can make layups better than Angel Reese. And if she thinks she's worth more than what she's being paid right now, she needs to do some soul searching or maybe take up another career. And remember, this is a person who once said she didn't like being, I use this word graciously because I don't like using this word on my platform, complains about being sexualized. And now and 2 days later, here she is in provocative clothing. So basically her hypocrisy and her narcissism rears its ugly head again. I know most of the WNBA community is tired of her act. Everybody in the sports community is tired of her act, and it's time for her to simply move on and part ways because we're all tired of it. And if she still thinks she's worth NBA player money after that, I don't know what to tell her. Maybe she needs to go get checked for CTE, I guess, because that's the only solution I have for Angel Reese. Uh, I'm telling you, athletes today are not what they were back in the day. And this coming from a guy who's watched sports going back when the peak of it all in the back end of the 70s and the early 80s. Now I'm going to go a little outside the box a little bit. This one needs to be brought up simply because of the person that it was involved. We know wrestling. It is what it is. You can talk about it every way you want. I'm not going to use the word fake like everybody else does because I think it's dumb, scripted, fun, entertainment, whatever. But the person involved in this, I think, deserves double the accolades for what took place the other day. A fellow named Lawrence Wendell Fall, aka Lex Luger, the total package, the narcissist, the All-American. It was announced he's going into the WWE Hall of Fame. Yes, the WWE Hall of Fame. It is what it is. I know a lot of you guys in the wrestling fans of the wrestling industry have this unique uh, atmosphere of creation of the industry, and it's actually cool in a lot of cases. But I bring this up because I think this more does have to do with him and his time in the industry. Because remember, he was the one that started the Monday Night Wars in September of '95 in Minneapolis when he showed up with the white shirt in the middle of a match between Ric Flair and Sting, and was like out of nowhere because nobody knew the situation. But I think this more has to do with the personal redemption he showed in his life, atoning for his sins, and basically just becoming a terrific spiritual human being after all he went through. I mean, we can digest his career a little bit. We know that. I mean, he became part of the Four Horsemen with Ric Flair. Basically was a football player, just walked into the wrestling industry, not having any knowledge. First match was with Ric Flair. Flair, made him look like $1 million. He told Jim Crockett, sign this guy because of the physique he had. Elevated, to WCW, and then later on to WWE. We know what happened in the summer of '94 when he body slammed Yokozuna. Went back to WCW out of nowhere. As I said, sparked the Monday Night Wars. It was basically nobody knew about it except Eric Bischoff and himself. And he showed up, and basically even Ric Flair and Sting in the ring were looking at the whole thing like, what is going on here? Parlayed it to, the whole WCW NWO faction. Became the world champ in '97 when he put Hogan in a submission move. But of course, after that, that's when his life started going off the rails. Met Elizabeth, alcohol, substance abuse, in and out of jails. And of course, everybody still thinks he killed Miss Elizabeth, which Luger, by his own admission, said he had a bad influence on her because he was hooked on it as much as Liz was. But in my opinion, I think Liz just had the opportunity to walk away from it, but couldn't because Lex was the bad influence. He told the story countless times, in and out of jails, rehabs. When he got out, went back to it. Uh, of course, at the end was in 2006, where he became very spiritual. And in 2007, had a chance to meet a bunch of people in San Francisco. Is where he had the paralysis. But when he got introduced into the WWE Hall of Fame this week, I think it's more about what he became after his wrestling career was over, because of the story has been chronicled countless times. He's been on the news in Atlanta for many reasons, all of them the wrong reasons. And for him to come back the way he did and to become this terrific person after everything was said and done, and now an inspiration to a lot of people. It speaks to the volume. It speaks volumes to what Lex Luger has become. And if he even said himself, "I wish I was like this when I was wrestling a little bit." Case of, I wish I knew if we could go back to hands of time. But Lex Luger, I think this is more about the personal redemption and the inspirational story that he became after his career was over and after the paralysis. And it is well earned and it's well deserved in that regard. and he deserves nothing but kudos and props. And if you guys are out there in that part of town where he is, pat him on the back and just tell him good job and congratulate him on his induction to the Hall of Fame. I mean, I know he's a part of the DDP Yoga is trying to walk so he can walk to the Hall of Fame to give his Hall of Fame speech coming up. I'm looking forward to that. But given what Lex Luger went through to see what he's become now as to what he was then, it speaks volumes to who he is at the end of the day. You just wish he hadn't gone through everything that he went through because he went through a whole lot. I mean, talk about the going to the flames of hell. That's what he did. Granted, a lot of it was self-imposed, even by his own admission, but it is well deserved. Congratulations to Lawrence Full, aka Lex Luger, the narcissist, the All-American, the total package. Well earned, well deserved. Actually, I can speak on him a little bit because I myself was in a dark phase once. I once thought about, no longer living on this earth because I was basically in my early 30s making bad choice after bad choice. So I basically forced myself to get my head out of my own butt the way Lex did. And basically I'm just trying to live day by day, even though there are times I do go through a dark phase in my own life. So I can relate to what Lex went through during that period because I still go through it. Now to all my fight followers, we're going to do a little revisionist history because we're going to Paris, France. This took place 37 years ago today. 37 years ago. Hands down, the worst decision in boxing history took place in Paris, France. This was Jose Luis Ramirez versus Pernell Whitaker for the lightweight championship of the world. Story with this, Whitaker, part of the 84 Olympic team, undefeated against a fading veteran, Jose Luis Ramirez, who amassed over 90 some odd victories. Pernell Whitaker basically just does anything and everything he wants to for 12 rounds, gives him a boxing lesson from start to finish. And because of Don King politics, as we all know, some way, somehow, inexplicably and inexcusably, Jose Luis Ramirez gets a decision. It's something that still makes fight fans scratch their heads about every day. This is the definition of a robbery because Jose Luis Ramirez did not win a round of this fight, and somehow judges gave him rounds. Something I can't comprehend, something I still can't explain, something I still can't try to explain, and something I'm not even going to try to explain because this decision was just beyond dreadful and abysmal. This fight was symbolic of the fact that one of these idiotic, corrupt governing bodies loves action fighters and not a fan of the sweet science, what Pernell Whitaker was. I mean, there were times Whitaker wasn't the greatest fan of the boxing intelligentsia because he was the low maintenance, no maintenance type of fighter who was in this for style, the sweet science, hit the old adage of hit and not get hit, who was the master of that technique from the back end of the 80s throughout the mid 90s when he ascended to the best fighter in the world. And this fight was basically another case of the boxing intelligentsia and the political aspect of the sport having a grudge against Pernell Whitaker for their own personal narrative, taking away a victory that he rightly deserved because he basically won every round and gave Jose Luis Ramirez a boxing lesson. Again, this was free TV, ABC Wide World of Sports, thrill of victory, agony of defeat. You know the intro with the agony of defeat, the skier tumbles down the hill. And this was basically the thrill of victory and the agony of defeat for Pernell Whitaker because he got the decision and some way, somehow, two judges thought he didn't deserve it because of boxing politics and the boxing intelligentsia as it was because they never bought into the act of Pernell Whitaker. And as a result, he was celebrating. And then when the French ring announcer declared Ramirez a winner, Whitaker was flat on his face. And there was outcry from even the commentator Angelo Dundee. Of course, Whitaker's trainer Lou Duva gets into another anxiety attack, just going crazy, rightfully so, because Whitaker was wrongfully robbed of a decision that he won basically every minute of every round. And all kinds of chaos ensued, protests and a whole bunch of other things. The bad blood between the Duvas and Don King, which was chronicled in the late 80s, reared its ugly head here. The only thing that came out of this was there was a rematch a year later in Whitaker's backyard in Norfolk, Virginia, and Whitaker basically won every minute of every round of that one and got his revenge. So that was basically what took place 37 years ago in Paris, France, the fact that boxing politics wanted to rear its ugly head and blatantly take away the rightful win of Pernell Whitaker and hand it to Jose Luis Ramirez because the boxing intelligentsia never liked or respected Pernell Whitaker at the time. And basically, it reared its ugly head. It was that way many other times, not just with him, but several other fighters of that ilk. I can go on. But Pernell Whitaker was basically the number one in that regard because the boxing intelligentsia and the politics they are felt the need to take away the victory he deserved. And instead of later on parlayed it to a rematch where Whitaker just boxed Ramirez's ears off again, essentially putting Ramirez into retirement for good because that was the last fight at that level. Pernell Whitaker eventually would become the only undisputed lightweight champ in the 3-belt era, where he unified the belts, beating Greg Haugen to win one, Jose Luis Ramirez to win the other, and Juan Nazario to complete the undisputed run, and to send himself to a top 5 all-time great lightweight. You could probably argue a top 25 all-time great fighter overall, especially when it comes to ring generalship, probably the master of his era. That was the late, great Pernell Whitaker. Victimized by boxing politics, Don King, and the boxing intelligentsia on this day 37 years ago in Paris, France. And when we talk about boxing robberies and the worst decisions ever, there's a whole laundry list here, okay? I mean, we all know this. I mean, let's start with the kingpin of them all that took place on November 30th, 1979. That was Marvin Hagler against Vito Antuofermo in their first fight. Anybody with a brain knows Hagler won 12 of the 15 rounds, and somehow the fight was ruled a draw. And like Pernell Whitaker, the boxing intelligentsia never was fond of Marvin Hagler. That's why he got screwed on that night in 1979. You can forget, go way back, maybe the most chaotic robbery took place in 1976 in Philadelphia between Antonio Escalera and Tyrone Everett. Something that still is just weird. I can't comprehend the decision on this one, how one judge scored 10 even rounds at a fight that he was supposed to try and judge a fight, but scores 10 even rounds. Not one, not two, 10. In a 15-round fight, you're scoring 10 even rounds. Something I still, or even those back then, can't understand or comprehend. I mean, it got so bad the Everett management team was going after judges, taking scorecards from the ring announcers to double check everything, and it was just a chaotic mess of Philadelphia. You can go back to back in the 1940s, the first fight between Joe Louis and Jersey Joe Walcott. Walcott wins going away. They give it to Joe Louis. It was so bad, even Joe Louis said, "I didn't deserve the win." That was at the highest level. Maybe the worst decision in heavyweight championship boxing history took place 1999 at Madison Square Garden. The first fight between Lennox Lewis and Evander Holyfield, where Lennox Lewis wins 10 of the 12 rounds. And everybody knows the story with that one. Some way, somehow, one judge scores a fight for Evander Holyfield, one scores it a draw, and the fight's declared a draw. And basically, Lennox Lewis said after the fight, what happened? No, what happened was you were victimized by Don King politics. I mean, isn't that the common denominator for a lot of this? The second fight between Sugar Ray Leonard and Thomas Hearns, maybe not quite that level, but some of the rounds that were scored in that fight were eyebrow raising because judges were giving Ray Leonard 10-8 rounds, even though he didn't floor Hearns. This despite the fact Tommy Hearns dominated the first 4 rounds, floored Leonard the third round, and was basically won the fight rather going away, but somehow the judges scored the fight a draw because they felt the need to give, actually, back up. They felt the need to articulate the scorecards to give Leonard more credit than he deserved, and that's why the fight was ruled a draw. That's what happened on that night in '89, the second encounter between Leonard and Hearns. The first fight between Manny Pacquiao and Tim Bradley, we know the story with that one. If you want to go to the amateur boxing area, nothing tops what happened to Roy Jones in South Korea. Okay, you people put it in overall boxing. I want to go that far, but in amateur boxing, nothing's going to top that. Even Marv Albert, who called the fight for NBC Olympics at the time, said it was very difficult to figure. Nobody knows what happened on that day. Despite many, many protests that favored Roy Jones, where the decision should have been reversed, the commission said, no, that's not going to happen, basically because it was edge of stone according to the International Olympic rules, which we know is a bunch of corrupt, idiotic, cross-brained morons working on that particular platform. and I could go on and on about many others. James Toney against Steve Taberi, where two judges weren't even licensed to score the fight for James Toney to win that one. Oscar De La Hoya against Felix Sturm is another one, a fight where De La Hoya had a guaranteed contract to fight Bernard Hopkins. Everybody knows Felix Sturm won the last 8 rounds of that fight, and basically the fight was given to De La Hoya, and basically Felix Sturm killed it in the interview saying Oscar De La Hoya won it because of his name and the fight coming up against Bernard Hopkins. So, uh, lots more I could get into, but that's basically the crux of them all. And if you go more modern, especially for my English followers, you know this one, when Jack Cottrell was robbed against Josh Taylor in the first fight. I mean, we in the States saw the robbery as much as you guys did overseas, and that was a bad one. And that was a darn bad one, too. So, lots of bad decisions. It happens all the time. Whatever the reasons it is, I'm not even going to get into it. But as I said all along, and I said this on the show not too long ago, nothing tops what happened 37 years ago today in Paris, France, when Pernell Whitaker, due to boxing politics, due to Don King, due to whatever way you want to call it, because the boxing intelligentsia never liked Pernell Whitaker, made sure he was robbed against Jose Luis Ramirez. And it was so bad that to where the Whitaker camp wanted the rematch in his backyard of Norfolk, Virginia, understandably so. And basically, he gave Ramirez a boxing lesson to win the lightweight championship of the world in his own backyard. It seemed like every year we always talk about one decision that basically it's historical in every kind of sense. I could bust out a lot more if I want to, but that's basically the main ones. That's why everybody says why boxing fandom is depleted or gone down or whatever. That's probably a big piece of it. You could talk about, going from network TV to premium TV with HBO Showtime to pay-per-view, but maybe the crux of it all is because of bad decisions like we've seen over the years. I could bring up a boatload of more, but that's basically the crux of it because there's always something in our sport. Actually, if you want to talk about robberies of another sense, how about what happened June 16, 1983, when Louis Rizzo felt the need and Panama Lewis felt the need to articulate and manipulate the gloves to beat Billy Collins so bad Collins winds up taking his own life. How about what happened the first fight between Mike Tyson and Razor Ruddock, where that fight was stopped inappropriately? Just speaking of George heavyweight fights, another robbery that's worth talking about, George Foreman being robbed by Shannon Briggs. It was so bad the FBI got involved, and that's how bad that robbery was. So the list goes on and on and on and on. I mean, I could bring up bad decision after bad decision after bad decision, bad stoppage, and a whole bunch of reasons why it happened. But I'm not a conspiracy theorist like a bunch of the people in the boxing community, like I see a lot in the NFL community, especially when it comes to, among many other things, officiating. Because, either they don't know how to think straight, or they just have a personal vendetta that they don't want to reveal. List goes on and on and on. Oh, I could go on all night if I want to, especially for my fight followers on this one, because this I could milk it till there's nothing left to milk. Problem is, when there's nothing left to milk, the milk reproduces itself, and there's more to milk. Because boxing robberies are always going to be a part of boxing, and that's how it's always going to be, whether you like it or not. I mean, I've lost count on many what I've seen. No, I don't consider, for those of you that wonder, no, I don't consider Leonard Hagler a robbery. You could probably say it's a bad decision. The only reason why Leonard Hagler was viewed as a robbery was because one judge some way somehow saw Sugar Ray Leonard winning 10 rounds. That's why it's viewed as a robbery, because there's no way Sugar Ray Leonard won 10 rounds. You can argue he won the fight. You can argue he won the fight against Hagler. I don't have a problem with it because I thought he did. I think it was not more about Sugar Ray Leonard winning. It was more Marvin Hagler losing, because Marvin Hagler intentionally gave away the first 5 rounds without a legit explanation. Something I've still waited for since 1987. Why he gave away the first 5 rounds on purpose. Ugh. I don't know what goes on in a fighter's mind anymore. Because even when I was in the boxing fraternity back then, it was one of the most, it's almost cult-like, and it's unique in its own way. And I mean cult in a good way. I mean, the word cult can be used good, can be used bad. But this internal following that boxing has as opposed to team sports like the NFL, the NBA, baseball, soccer, among many others. Maybe it's because of the one-on-one aspect of boxing that has its own cult following internally, especially with some fighters, especially back in the day when we had marquee names who could hit the lead story on Sports Center back in the 70s, 80s, and 90s. Maybe not as much anymore, but now it makes you wonder what is the crux of what's going on. I mean, of course, a lot of it is the internet and among many other things, the enhancement of technology. But as I said before, maybe if we had this back then, we could have a better clue on why things happened the way they did. So, you know, still good fights out there, still worth watching. Maybe we just need to have a different approach to how we do things and how we approach certain fights because it's more about narrative versus the actual fight. You guys have a narrative for certain fighters. You guys have a narrative for certain world titles. You guys have certain narratives for certain events you want to push. Maybe just instead of pushing narratives, just sit back and enjoy the sport. Because right now we're just lucky we're getting fights at a time when fights are hard to come by, especially in the mainstream market the way it used to be. Because now we're stuck with all these streaming platforms like DAZN, among many others, instead of having the HBOs and Showtimes or the ABCs, NBCs, CBSs we had back in the day. Because it's fewer and far between how we're able to get fights. And of course, we have the idiots who want to use the Amazon Fire Stick to get fights for free because they're not man enough to cough up the dollars. You guys are just a cowardly disgrace. And that's where I stopped with you guys a long time ago. Especially that guy Matt from Brunch Boxing, whatever the hell that coward calls himself. Dan Rafael is not much better because the guy is 400 pounds and can't stop eating cheeseburgers and acting like a coward. That's part of the problem with the community. The who's, the what's, and the reasons. I've learned how to stay away from that. That's why I do my own analysis. I do my own shows in all sports, not just boxing, the NFL, the NBA, even other aspects of life, because I had to learn how to be my own self and do things my own way. They come to me, I don't go to anybody. I've had people come to me for shows in the NFL, the NBA, and boxing. I'm just me, all right? I'm just me. I'm not going to bend the knee to appease anybody else. I'm not going to bend the knee to give you guys your clickbait, your ratings, your views, or whatever. I'm just going to be me, and I'm going to be honestly me. And that's so long. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, that's great too. Because this is why I left the NFL and boxing communities many years ago. Because I was in this, this is when the social media areas just began to break surface. And I was reached out by people in the sports communities. I left because it was all about the narrative for them. It wasn't about what I wanted to be. They didn't like how I was. They didn't like my approach. They didn't like the fact that I was able to spot moles or spot, you know, with the new areas is called fake news or whatever, that I could spot it from afar. They didn't like it. And because of it, I walked out. I walked out and I just decided not to deal with it again till the whole live streaming podcasting thing started to evolve in the mid 2010s. I shied away from it simply because I did not know how I would act on a microphone in front of a camera. Then I get calls all over the place because I started to interact on the X platform, on the Facebook platform about various topics, especially sports, and they came to me. That's how I like it. You're not going to see me force myself down people's throat. You're not going to see me bow down to somebody because they want something to fit their narrative. I'm not going to be a part of a groupie sort of thing because they have the same agreement I do, or they're the same fans that I am. Simply because we get to that, that's where all the screw ups happen with everybody's head, and I distance myself from them. Case in point, and I bring this up a lot of times. When I was in Memphis for the Lennox Lewis Mike Tyson fight, the Mike Tyson groupies they acted like the Mike Tyson fans of the '80s. Everybody knows I call Mike Tyson fans the worst despicable fans that God ever created. The only thing remotely close are Bengals fans here in Cincinnati because they're all toxic human beings. But when I was there in 2002, I saw firsthand what toxicity was all about, when the groupies known as Mike Tyson fans, who were so psychotically insane in their head to where they don't know how to think straight, were stupid enough to think he was going to beat Lennox Lewis when Mike Tyson could never carry Lennox Lewis's jockstrap. I try to tell them that. You know what happened June 8, 2002 in Memphis? I saw it in person. And basically watching Mike Tyson fans cry like the cheap babies that they are that night brought satisfaction to me simply because I learned about toxic fan groupies that night. And there's no worse toxic fan groupies than Mike Tyson fans. Plain and simple. Why? They think because he has this explosive knockout, which he was explosive, he was exciting, that he deserves to be on this pedestal that all guys of all walk of human life belong on. That's the psychotic thinking of Mike Tyson fans, and that's the psychotic thinking of sports groupies. I stay away from. I let my eyes do the dictating. I let my head do the thinking. I let my ears do the listening, and I gladly listen to you guys. And there's a small handful I listen to, and I try to keep it small because if you try to get it bigger, that's when things get a little crazy. That was my mistake many years ago when I was in this because it got bigger and bigger and bigger. Basically, everybody from all angles wanted to talk to me, saying, hey, come join our group. Come join our group. Come join our team. Come join our, sports pages. Come write for us. Come talk with us. Okay, I had to slow down way back when. Helped me out when I went to Memphis to see Mike Tyson fans, and especially the night when he got knocked out by Lennox Lewis. Remind me a lot of why Mike Tyson, not just Mike Tyson fans, but sports groupies and these super fans or whatever the heck you want to call them. They're just toxic to the sports community as a whole. That's why I say I just stay on my own lane. You guys are more than welcome to come to me and talk to me. I gladly entertain it. But there will be a line that I'm going to draw in the middle because I'm not going to get suckered in like I did a long time ago. And for those of you who basically welcome me back with open arms, I just have one last thing to say, and I'm going to wrap this up. Thank you. I didn't want to leave, but I'll also acknowledge I mismanaged a lot of things, but it didn't help. I was people coming at me from every angle because I just wanted to be me. I let my actions do the dictating. I leave it to you guys to have the opinions. I said, like it, great. Don't like it, great. That's fine too, because I can take positive feedback. I can take negative feedback. I just use negative feedback as a tool to find ways to get better, and that's what I'm learning how to do now. And on that note, I will wrap up this nightly edition of Sirhan on X. And you can see the nighttime hit here in Cincinnati. Actually, 5 minutes before 9. I gotta hit the sack. Gotta go back to the day job tomorrow. Another 12 hours. And as I wrap it up, my favorite thing to tell everyone, and this goes back to where I learned myself, when I reference myself as well as Lex Luger. Always, always, always make self-care your number one priority in life. If you don't take care of yourself first, nothing else matters. I will be on X Spaces tomorrow night with the Wager Wire crew. Great bunch. Talk more NFL. If I can spare some time to talk more on my show, I will do it. And I will not be on from Friday, Saturday, and Sunday because I have a sports event I have to attend called the Cincinnati Cyclones Hockey. They always like me. I don't know why, but what do you expect? At least they're not Bengals fans. But until then, I hope everybody out there has themselves a wonderful 12th of March 2025. Take care of yourselves. God bless. Enjoy the rest of the evening. And I hope to talk to you guys soon.